Ooh, subscribe.
Why are you subscribing to a channel called Metallurgy in the Great Depression? You hate history stuff.
It's recommended for me. It says so at the top of the page. I'll definitely end up liking it.
Walt, recommended for you is just marketing speak. It's just channels who've paid for ad slots, or who the algorithm likes because they just have lots of views on their latest videos or something. There's no way you're actually going to enjoy any of this.
No, James. It says it's recommended for me. Why would they recommend something unless they knew who I was? Google knows which videos I watch, what long I watch them for, what ads I skip and which ones I click on, which restaurants I visit, how highly I rate them, what time I go to sleep, and when I wake up. It knows everything about me. I don't even know myself that well. If I can't trust the algorithm, who can I trust? Now, subscribe.
Oh, Walt, come on. Testing medicine on chimpanzees. You're a vegan. You hate animal testing.
The algorithm, James. I don't need plants, only blood. Your heartbeat is so loud. Let me silence it!
Oh, man. Oh, I'm so glad to have you back on the podcast. I was alone last week and now you're killing me because you watched a YouTube video.
No, I'm mostly killing you because you had the audacity to record without me.
I know, what a scandal. You have to take that up with the Space Commanders.
I would if I was not so worried about pooping my pants
and
if
just
I did so.
Knew how to contact them directly.
Yeah, that too. Welcome to the Get Commanded podcast. It's the GCP brought to you by POG, Palms Off Gaming, sponsor of this podcast. We're all uniting forces to help you to have better games of Commander. I'm your host, Walt.
And hello, Commander players. I am your other gracious host today, James. I put gracious in there today. Don't know why.
You're feeling particularly gracious.
Yeah, I'm feeling
grateful
for the patrons. See, good
I
segue.
was gonna go the exact same route with the word gracious. So you take it away.
King of segues over here. Obviously, as we do at the start of every episode, we do like to quickly shout out the best way to support the content that Walt and I make, and it's on Patreon. There's a bunch of awesome rewards, including getting a shout out at the end of every single episode. Mm-hmm. You can check all that out at patreon.com/getcommandedpodcast and make this podcast better and better. Walt actually just ran me through a bunch of new upgrades for our broadcast station just recently,
stay tuned.
Which is pretty exciting.
A few episodes away still, but there will be a very, very cool and exciting spending of that Patreon money. It wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for those people who support us every month. So thank you for that, and check it out if you haven't already. Now, we do have the little green light blinking on our desk over here, so we have an incoming transmission from the deep depths of the galaxy from the Space Commanders. It's time to get commanded.
Your transmissions are very valuable to our cohort and to your human audience as well, but you cannot possibly speak on everything. What supplemental forms of content exist online for those wishing to broaden their understanding, and what sorts of players will enjoy each one?
Look, I appreciate the fact that the Space Commanders are aware that we're not the only people that listeners can get information from.
That's true.
Hopefully they end up abducting Josh Lee Kwai,
I was gonna say,
get the professor at one point.
If they could steal anybody else and let us have just one time
just a day.
Out.
It's starting to be sunny in Melbourne. Yeah. I'd like to go outside.
Before we go outside, we have to do this transmission, though.
We should go through it.
We're talking about other content creators out there, and specifically, ones who maybe cover content that we don't cover so much, or cover similar content to us.
Well, yeah, I mean, because we're just two people in the Commander community around the world.
Yeah.
And Magic is the most played trading card game, and Commander is the most popular way to play it. And there's even so many ways to play Commander in itself. So, like, naturally, two blokes in a bedroom in Australia are not going to be able to go through everything.
We literally could not possibly cover everything for you, as much as we might like to. So yeah, there will be other content out there that we can recommend to you. Supplemental content, I think, is how the Space Commanders described it. But they also wanted to describe, and I guess this will be our slant for when we're recommending people, what sorts of players will enjoy the content that we're talking about. So what we might do, we'll divide into a few categories, I reckon.
I think that's a good way to do it, because there is like a distinct group of people that do like gameplay or like information-based stuff. I'm with you.
100%. So we'll go through sort of our favorites in each of those camps, and maybe for each of them we'll just briefly touch on, as the Space Commanders requested, what sorts of people will enjoy that content.
I think that's a great way to go about it, because I know that our audience and the listeners that we have out there, you guys are really diverse. We have had great conversations with you about everything from CDH to color philosophy to, you know, we've done a pretty broad range of episodes, and Walt and I ourselves watch and consume a ton of content. We're content creators ourselves. We have to know what content looks like to create it for you guys. So yeah, hopefully you take away some of these recommendations and they fit your player description.
There's some really great stuff out there.
Much better than ours.
I mean, some of it. So you gotta be honest sometimes. So you mentioned gameplay. Let's jump straight in with gameplay, I reckon.
Do you want to do like the king of all kings of gameplay first?
Yeah, I mean, speaking of stuff that's better than our stuff, they have like a whole studio at this point, a whole team of people making it, a crew of people. Command Zone, and specifically in gameplay, Game Nights, their premier sort of series.
So if you have been living under a rock, if you don't know Game Nights, these guys produce a gameplay series that they've been running for like a good 6, 7, maybe 8 years now, something like that.
Long time,
And they get guests on the show, and it's shot in this reality TV show style. Like they have like a, you know, like the diary room from Big Brother?
Yeah, they have sort of cut-asides. Like, you know, like someone will make an action in the game and then it'll be like Jimmy Wong in like the other room being like, so I'm doing this because this I want...
really important because of these reasons,
Yeah, it's like any reality TV show basically, but it's gameplay and it's Commander.
And it's at the highest level of production. Like you can't argue with these guys in terms of the content quality that they produce. Josh Lee Kwai and Murph are like Hollywood professionals. Yeah. These guys produce it and direct the show. Yeah. These guys are doing it as professionally as they possibly can. Like their like recent one absolutely blew me away, from the Lord of the Rings one, where they built like a set where they were hobbits and they shot it in the same kind of style that Lord of the Rings was shot to trick you into thinking that they were little hobbits.
So cute.
Amazing content.
So good. And shout out to, I know she's just left their team, but Lady Danger was one of the main ones who was building all those sets for them. She did a really, really awesome job.
Yeah. Incredible costumes and set
everything about the production quality is through the roof, basically.
So tweet at Get Commanded at Command Zone. James and Walt want to be on Game Nights. Is what we're saying.
Get us on there. I think in terms of who I recommend Game Nights to, I mean, look, I think everyone should watch at least a little bit and see if they like it, because it is just so good. I think it's best for those people who like Timmies, basically. People who enjoy the really bombastic, large plays and the way they affect the table, because in Game Nights, those are animated. You know, if someone casts a finale of Devastation, you bet your butt you're going to see a dinosaur roar. You know what I mean?
And like there's also, you know, even the Toxic Deluge plays, there's like this putrid burst of slime and flies buzzing around everywhere. And you like hear a dragon roar and all that kind of stuff. It feels like what you want it to look like when you're playing paper.
Exactly. So if you're someone who loves those big splashy plays and loves the feeling of being a wizard, you know, of slinging amazing game warping spells, Game Nights is for you.
100%. And also, I would recommend at least everyone just go check out and appreciate the level of quality that they're producing.
Oh yeah, watch at least one video just to get an understanding of how much work goes into that thing. It's amazing.
Highly recommend the Planes Chase episode with the Loading Ready Run team, Graham because they did like some really interesting green screen stuff that wasn't actually a green screen. It was a big projection. It was really interesting how they shot it.
Yeah.
Looked great.
Big time. Another gameplay one that I really enjoy. This is a sort of somewhat more recent one. Shuffle Up and Play.
Yeah, by the prof.
Yeah, Tolarian Community College is the YouTube channel these go up on, but he's got a specific series of gameplay content. This is not just Commander, by the way. He gets people in to play Pauper, Modern, Pioneer, basically any format of Magic you've ever thought you might like to see someone play.
Have they played Dan yet? Surely they have to have played Dan.
I don't think they have. I feel like if I saw it, I would have watched the video because I love that format.
If you have never investigated Dan, go and investigate it. That's your homework after this episode.
100%. But yeah, Shuffle Up and Play. This is like it's got a very sort of laid back feel to it, but I would say it's sort of like almost halfway to Command Zone in terms of like the production quality is quite high.
They have a very good set. The editors are great.
Yeah.
There's animations.
There's small animations that they do. I love the thing they do when they go to combat and the playmats kind of swing around into attackers and blockers.
Yeah.
Very simple thing, but looks really satisfying and like looks like what it feels like to go through the attackers and blockers step in a game. I think Shuffle Up and Play, in terms of who I recommend it for, I personally recommend it very highly for anyone who's fairly new to Magic. They do a really good job of explaining each of the cards as they play them.
Yeah, I would say on that there is one thing that the professor says that irks me just a little bit. Mm-hmm. He always says reading the card explains the card.
Yes.
And I take great problem with this because sometimes cards are just confusing. Shout out to reading the card won't explain the card.
I was going to say.
But like that, I think new players get a great opportunity to, because they slow gameplay down. Like the gameplay is very slow.
They're long videos.
Yeah, but it's because they're reading every card and they're reading the rules and even explaining, this is great because it interacts with this.
Yeah.
You know? Whereas some things are blasted by in other content, whereas this is great for new players because everything is explained.
Yeah. It does have as well, I should explain, like compared to Command Zone, which is very polished and production-ish, in Shuffle Up and Play, you do get a bit more of the like personalities of the people there, especially weirdly when they play, I think, 1v1 formats. They often spend good chunks of time just talking to people because they've often had pro players on. They talk to a lot of pro players about like pro tours they've won or pro tours they've competed in or previous iterations of Standard.
Yeah.
It's just like a really cool way to hang out with some really, really good Magic players.
They had Brian Kibler on a while ago and I actually found out like, because I love flicking my cards, as everyone knows that's played with me. But Brian Kibler has a very interesting way he does it. Like, I do it from the side. I flick kind of like horizontally.
Yeah.
Brian Kibler can do it vertically and like flick cards from the back of his hand up and out and on top. And he explained why he used to do it because there was someone on the Pro Tour way back in the day that was like able to basically count cards and track cards in your hand. So like if you were, he could even almost consider the fact that you had a red elemental blast or something because you were putting it to the front of your hand.
Wow.
It was so Brian Kibler used to shuffle the hell out of his hand
to throw that guy off. How funny.
You get like those kind of things on Shuffle Up and Play. There's little insights.
You don't really get that anywhere else, and you don't get those sorts of players, I think, on almost anybody else's content. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're interested in like the personalities and stuff, check out, he's now got a pretty big roster of guests. So
a lot of episodes as well. Probably my favorite gameplay content at the moment actually is this next one, which is Commander at Home.
Brian Kibler.
Also Brian Kibler. Yeah, seamless segue once again. Just for the vibes itself, this for me is like closest to the feeling of actually being at a kitchen table with your friends playing Magic. Like it's like half of the talk that they have is about the cards and the other half is just banter and meaningless jokes.
Yeah,
you know?
and they're generally like within the game, like they're bantering about the spell they cast 2 turns ago, or like the time that they were last on Commander at Home. Like Krim was on the other week, and Brian was saying like, "Oh, why do we let you back on this show, Krim?"
Yeah.
Like it's very bantery, and like we are now playing a lot more kitchen table at your house. You're like pretty much routinely inviting people around at the moment, which I'm loving.
Just such a fun way to play, right?
And I reckon Commander at Home gives me the same vibes that we get when I'm playing on your kitchen table.
Yeah, I love that about it. Definitely. Yeah. It's also like, I think I would recommend this most highly to players who love the social aspect of Commander, right? Like if the gameplay is kind of secondary to you, to the vibes and the personalities, check out Commander at Home.
Yeah.
I reckon.
It feels like they're your friends as well, which is really cool.
100%. And in a similar vein, actually, it's also, there's a bit of crossover here. So Commander at Home is Brian Kibler and Olivia Gobert-Hicks, who are dating but also live together, etc. Edie Hijinks, EDH, however you want to say it, is hilarious. Is also Olivia Gobert-Hicks, but this one is with Ailey. Ailey Loney, I want to say. That's probably wrong. Anyway, the two of them run Edie Hijinks, and this is a similar sort of vibe to Commander at Home.
They play over spell table, right?
Only spell table games, which does mean that you get a much better opportunity to see people from overseas. They're pretty good at playing with like people from Europe and people. They played with Quintessential Commander before. Have you
Not
watched this
heard
guy
of them,
before?
no.
Yeah, I think they're based in Singapore. I could be wrong about that, but they have like really funny content that they make. They've got like a regular pod and they just like film content, kind of like Spike Feeders. They have their pod of people that they like playing with. They just film. They play together, they have banter, whatever. Like, that's the whole thing.
I genuinely feel... I've been watching Edie Hijinks because I think that that's what Get Commanded could potentially do.
Yeah.
I think that we could follow in Edie Hijinks' footsteps a little bit.
Yeah.
I really, really like their vibe. Again, recommend it like the same group of people that you recommended for Commander at Home to Edie Hijinks. The people that love the social aspect of Commander and like seeing friends hang out and... Yeah, the vibes are primary to the supplementary of the game of Commander that they're playing. Yeah,
I would agree. Similar kind of person, definitely, who would enjoy that. What else do you reckon in terms of gameplay content?
Well, I mean, like, we've spoken about the king of content of gameplay. They actually have the extra content, which is called Extra Turns. So game nights have, like, another series that run called Extra Turns, and it's basically like a really reduced version of game nights.
Yeah.
They take out all the wild animations, all the cutscenes to the post-game interviews. Yeah. All of that kind of stuff is cut out and it just focuses on the game. And it's generally a little bit higher powered and in my opinion more true to how that group of Command Zone players would play Commander.
Yeah.
Especially if you listen to Command Zone's podcast, you can go, okay, well, you're talking about, this is great with this suite of cards. And you're like, those cards are like $100 each.
Yeah.
But every time you're on game nights, you're playing the pre-cons. I mean, you know why. They're sponsored by Wizards of the Coast. They're doing it to promote the new set. I understand that.
It's for that casual audience of new players and stuff. But yeah, I agree with you. I think Extra Turns caters more specifically to maybe their more established listeners, which is people who've played Commander for a long time, who probably more so want to see what does Josh's best deck look like? What does Jimmy Wong's best deck look like?
Yeah, well, like I've seen, there was a Game Nights episode ages ago that I loved, and Josh was piloting his Athreos Shadowborn Apostle deck.
Who he played recently in the live Game Nights as well.
Yeah, and like that deck is a combo-tastic, high-powered, unapologetically trying to win as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Really cool.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
But never would see it on a new episode of Game Nights just because of the direction they're going. So if you're like... If you even just like Josh, Jimmy, Rachel, Murph, and the Command Zone crew, and you're really wanting to hang out with them, but you find Game Nights a little bit...
overproduced.
Dumbed down even.
Yeah.
Like, if you're an experienced Commander player and want to hang out with them, watch Extra Turns.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. They also have been really good with, having a sort of pretty wide array of guests on Extra Turns lately. Like, they sort of will feature people who they may not necessarily feature on game nights for a variety of reasons, or maybe they're just not quite that big enough yet. They sort of take a chance, I guess, on people who are a bit smaller for Extra Turns, which I appreciate as well. It's like a good way to meet more people out there.
Maybe we can get on Extra Turns.
So... Well, to clarify, we're getting you to @Command Zone on Twitter. You're telling them, hey, get Walton James on game nights.
Yep.
But if that's not feasible, just Extra Turns.
Extra Turns is fine. They're okay with that. Like,
they'll settle for it.
They'll settle for it. Yeah, we're really settling down here.
For a low fee. No.
A guy is cradled.
Yes. Yes.
Who
No,
else in terms of the gameplay space are you watching at the moment?
I actually don't watch these guys very much, but I would say I want to give at least one recommendation for people who just want really high-powered content, not CDH, but high-powered content, because extra turns are a bit that way. Tabletop Jocks.
Oh, this is with
Joe Johnson.
Yeah,
aka Black Nito.
Black Nito, that's
He
his
always
name,
introduces himself as Joe Johnson, aka Black Nito.
Yeah.
This is super high-powered content. They pretty much always play that sort of like, just below CDH. Like they're playing Crypts, they're playing Fast Mana, they're playing Rhystic Studies, they're playing like all the really, really strong cards in our format, but they're not in CDH. It's that high-powered tier.
It's not a meta deck.
No.
Yeah, it's trying to do a big, powerful thing, but it's not trying to do it as efficiently and as cleanly and as protected as a CDH deck is doing it. It's like a Timmy just gets unlimited budget, really.
That's totally how I would describe it, because you won't see many combos. They do happen, but mostly it's just people who want to play the vibe of Battle Cruiser, but with the absolute best cards in the format. You know what I mean?
There's like a lot of people within my play group that I would just recommend Tabletop Jocks and content like, extra turns too, because there's this culture within my play group at the moment where like, playing lower powered casual decks is just not fun and as interactive because everyone knows the most objectively correct play to make.
Right.
Whereas once you add this like power jump, you get this nuance to the game where threat assessment's a little more challenging. Even interaction is a little bit harder to pull off.
Yeah.
And I think that seeing that as content on YouTube allows you to see it in action and see where the power level is at.
Yeah.
And construct decks that kind of fit that power level.
Yeah.
And fit the playgroup. So if you're finding your playgroup are getting a little bit higher powered, but not CDH level, or just doing the Timmy thing of being like, oh my god, if I ramp out Gishath on turn 3, it's gonna be nuts. Like if you're wanting to do that, Gishath is not CDH playable.
No.
But it is a fun, powerful commander that if you can play with it well, it's strong. Watch these guys and tinker with your decks, or even build a deck that they have built and see if you like that style.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think equally, like, it's worth checking it out at least, because for me, and this is part of the reason I don't watch much Tabletop Jocks, I actually don't enjoy, like, when I watch games that are about that power level, they feel a little bit like whoever just finds the best cards wins. Like,
I see that.
It depends a whole lot on the game, obviously.
But do like a lot of like lower powered casual commander though.
I don't know. It's just it's something about like I don't know. It's hard for me to even describe in words. But
I get what you're saying. As someone that knows your play, I get what you're saying.
It's sort of like about. I think to compare it specifically with Tabletop Jocks, I like when interactions feel like they matter. And sometimes with Tabletop Jocks, when someone just has that explosive start, and this is also a broader statement for high-powered content, but someone just has that explosive start, if people aren't also playing the super high-powered interaction, because sometimes people just play the high-powered ramp pieces and the high-powered tutors and stuff, but no one's running interaction, it's sort of like, okay, so we're just in a race then. So whoever races to the win con fastest wins.
Everyone plays solitaire. Whoever can play solitaire the quickest wins the game.
And look, this is a problem that comes up a lot in every level of Commander. People going, run more interaction, etc. And it is a problem. But I think I find, especially with some of the around this power level, you get people who want to just pop off all the time, but don't want to stop anyone else from popping off. And it's like you're creating a particular sort of game that, me personally, I'm not interested in.
Why would I take out Golter for a, Force of Vigor? Why would I do that?
Why would I ever do that?
It's a 12/12 trample, and this is something that evokes and dies? I'm not doing that.
No.
Free interaction to remove someone's... Run interaction, people.
Run interaction. I should say, just as like a little disclaimer as well for Tabletop Jocks, they definitely have a much more adult sense of humor on there, especially compared to some of the other content we've spoken about. So, just keep that in mind. If you're someone who likes that, 100% check them out, because they have they are funny for sure. But just be wary if you're not someone who gravitates towards that sort of stuff.
15 plus.
Yeah, 15 plus. That'd be the way to go. Yeah, for sure. Now the next category I want to talk about, just because I always love talking about this, is budget.
Oh, shocking that you want to talk about people that make budget content. Look, if I wasn't here, this podcast would just be called Walt and his budget cards that he thinks people should play.
I mean, you're not wrong. No, so budget content. So there's a bunch of people out there who make budget content. To be honest, I actually am not so in touch with this sphere so much anymore because I have my own ways of getting in touch with budget stuff.
You become a master of your own
I like
domain.
I like to wish I had, but yeah, there's definitely some stuff out there that helped me to get better at this coming up.
Well, like I remember you watching Commander's Quarters quite a lot.
Yeah, they're definitely one. I must admit, I unsubscribed from Commander's Quarters about a year ago.
I have as well.
Because I found, look, he still makes the same content he used to make, and it's still about as good as it was, which is deck techs for cheap decks. He still makes them, he's still very good at them, but a lot of his other videos, and I just fully don't recommend any of these other videos, are just opinion pieces where he sort of like whines and moans about the state of the format and Wizards of the Coast, and it's just not good content. It makes you depressed. Yeah. And it makes you angry, and it's just not helpful. It's not helpful content.
I guess this is our hot take on content creators at the moment. Like, Walt and I are generally two very, like, positive, happy, go-lucky people, generally in life.
Yeah.
And sometimes when we're faced with someone that just does nothing but criticize something that they enjoy, like, why are you beating the thing that gives you enjoyment?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. I think that Mitch from Commander's Quarters in the last 2 years has really gone down that, you know, he has the clickbaity thumbnails of like, why would Wizards do this kind of thing.
Wizards like, stuffed up.
Yeah. Like, okay, sure, they put out something that might damage the format, but like no one's talking about this in 3 days.
No.
Genuinely, in 3 days' time, this is nothing. No one will talk about this again.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably a broader thing on content, probably, right?
Yeah.
Like, we've had some very long conversations ourselves about what kind of content we want to make because we're aware there's this just vast array of, to us, reasonably unhelpful content out there of people criticizing stuff, people giving like very, very bare bones, you know, pre-con upgrades. There's a reason that our pre-con upgrade guide is a guide to upgrading any pre-con.
Yeah.
Because we know there's a pre-con upgrade guide for every pre-con that's ever existed out there on YouTube. We don't want to make that stuff because we don't think it's useful to you at all.
Yeah, and also like the reason why we're, you know, even taking this command from the Space Commander is because the content already exists. Go look at that content.
If you actually genuinely want to be up to date, like I will say, Commander's Quarters kept me very up to date on cards that were being spoiled.
Yeah.
And secret lairs that were coming out because he posts like every day and he's got to talk about something every day.
Yeah.
So you stay up to date. So if you're someone who just wants one destination and you're interested in comparing people's opinions on stuff, by all means check it out. But yes, for me and James, not so interested in that kind of content. But I will say, he still makes very good budget content. He's got a really good understanding of what cards are currently cheap as well, which is really good. Like when he brews a deck, he's not just brewing like the typical 25-cent cards that we all know about, like Rampant Growth. He's actually aware of like, oh, Commander Masters just brought down the price of Mangara the Diplomat. So if we're building
that was
a
huge price drop.
Massive. It was like $15 to $20. It's like $1.50 now.
Ridiculous.
So yeah, if he's building a life gain deck today, you can expect him to include Mangara. Like he's aware of that kind of stuff. So yeah, if you're interested in brewing on a budget, I would recommend Commander's Quarters. I would probably slightly higher recommend, actually, the Nitpicking Nerds.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically, they have this series called Budget Bombs.
I haven't seen this one.
You haven't seen it? So they release it I think it's like every fortnight. Maybe it's not like a scheduled in thing. They just seem to pop up every now and then. Maybe it's once a month, actually. That could be right. But they basically they talk about cards that are cheap right now. And they basically talk at length. They feature only 10 to 12 cards, but they're like, this is how good this card is. This is what kind of deck you should play this card in. And this is why you should grab this card right now, basically. Again,
sweet.
They're not talking about cards that are just like cheap all the time, like Rampant Growth or whatever. They're being like, hey, this card just got reprinted into the ground. It's really strong. We've played it in our decks. Pick one up. It won't let you down. Yeah.
Yeah, I like people that respect budget as part of the ability. Like the people that do budget well have the ability to recognize when something's at a low point.
Yeah.
Like, you know, even in your Thrifty Interludes and Thrifty Thursdays blog posts, some of those cards that you featured on Thrifty Thursdays months ago have crept up slowly in price just because people are like stopping sleeping on them. You know what I mean? Like there's
it's
reasons.
all me, actually.
I think, this microphone is sending a signal out to everyone in the world right now. Everyone that plays Commander listens to us. And everyone that appreciates those cards just buys them. And then Card Kingdom is like, Walt's put out another post again.
He's foiled our plans for the last time. Sorry, I fully derailed what you were talking about. But no, it's good that people understand what stuff's cheap and that's cheap now.
Yeah, and I think that there is like actual, like, you know, we've said multiple times, specifically around like burnout. Like, don't burn yourself out trying to keep up to date with spoiler season and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there are great content creators that do all of that research for you.
Yeah.
And produce stuff like this Budget Bombs thing. I'm going to check it out because they seem, I mean, Nitpicking Nerds make a ton of content.
They make daily content. Daily Commander content specifically, yeah.
That's insane. Well, like, the amount of research that they do and the amount of time that they dedicate it to this game is more time than I have to look at spoilers.
Yeah.
They can do that research for me and go, hey, top 10 cards, go check these out.
Yeah.
They're like 50 cents.
Take some of the pressure off you, 100%. I will say, not quite as declaratively as with Commander's Quarters, that I don't like the rest of their content, but I find the rest of the Nitpicking Nerds content to be just okay. They have some series that are quite good. I actually quite like their gameplay content, but apart from Budget Bombs, they're not really a channel I gravitate towards a lot, so I can't personally recommend them super highly.
I think it's just the thing of, like, once you're making daily content, you're just having to poop stuff out at, like, a ridiculous rate, right?
And also, it's like, I worry that sometimes it waters down the quality of the content, just naturally, right? You have to post it every day. You can't be posting the absolute best content every day, because we're not Casey Neistat.
Fair enough.
You know...
I feel there is a little bit of irony here of us being like, let's critique content creators. You know what the best budget content is? I would recommend our episode, Budget Boy. That's like ages old episode now, right?
Episode 7 of our podcast.
Jesus, that is really old.
I will say that a lot of my opinions that I expressed in that episode about how to build on a budget and that kind of thing are still true.
Yeah.
It's probably a topic I'll revisit in the near future, I think. I'm hoping the Space Commanders will let me revisit in the near future.
Because we don't decide.
No.
None of this is scripted.
No.
No research has been done.
We just walk in and get abducted. It's crazy. I do recommend Budget Boy, actually. It was a good episode. And yeah, if you go back and listen to it and you really love it, let us know, because I think it'd be a good one to revisit, for sure.
I think so.
Now, speaking of how funny we are, it's an awful segue. Funny content, James. What do you recommend as, like, content creators who make amusing Magic content?
See, I feel like we now have to, like, switch like mediums. A lot of the stuff that we've recommended has been on YouTube.
Yeah.
And these guys are funny in their own right. Like, you know, when you watch a Game Nights episode, you'll giggle. Gameplay content is funny.
Yeah.
But on TikTok at the moment, there are some hilarious creators that are making, like, 2-minute blitz videos, not even, like, sometimes 30-second videos of just skits for Magic the Gathering and Commander-based stuff. One of the ones that I've followed and basically browsed his page at length is Moldhound or Moldhound?
Moldhound, yeah.
Moldhound?
He's very funny.
He's so quick-witted. He never says ums or ahs, and it just comes across brilliantly.
He's, like, as a writer who has an ongoing Magic comedy-based series, he is an extraordinarily good writer of jokes. Like, as someone who just I recognize a master when I see one. I think I'm reasonably good at writing pretty funny content. I'm not a master. I seriously think Moldhound's ability to, like, he crafts jokes really well. There's a really underrated aspect of writing a joke, and I think I've maybe mentioned this to you once or twice before, but the best joke is structured in such a way where it's not clear what the punchline is until, like, the last word or two of the sentence. So, and Moldhound is a master of this. Go and watch some of his content and pay attention to the fact that he will start a sentence and you kind of think you know where it's going, and then he ends in a place you don't expect, and that's the ha-ha moment.
It's the, setup, juxtaposition, or, like, the flip, and that's the punchline. That's the classic structure of a joke.
Yeah.
The series that I'm in love with on his TikTok feed is his roasts of commanders.
So good.
He basically just takes, people comment on the videos that he does, being like, roast my commander.
Roast Muldrotha.
Yeah, or like, I'm playing Niv Mizzet Perun, roast me. And he'll get on and he'll be like, anyone that plays Niv Mizzet Perun either wasn't loved as a child, or, like, and he'll just, like, absolutely kick you when you're down on your commander. I've seen some really interesting roasts. I saw one on Tyam the other day. The one that, like, pay 3 and remove 3 counters from something, mill 3
Yeah.
and return a 3 drop from graveyard to battlefield. or
Green,
something.
black, white, classic green, black, white thing.
Yeah, it's like, you know, you wanted to play Abzan, and this is what you came to. Real original, bro. Like,
yeah.
I just really, really like him.
He's
just
really
funny.
good.
I always will stop on my TikTok doom scrolling to watch his videos.
I also super highly recommend his Shuffle Up and Play to come full circle. He was on Shuffle Up and Play.
Oh, really?
Playing Treasure Cruise, the format that we then in our community
yes, we
featured.
did run that.
He brought a Treasure Cruise deck that he had built to the table, and they
That's so
played.
cool.
Treasure Cruise is a variant of Commander where you
Similar to Plane Chase. If you've
it's
ever played Plane Chase,
very
it's
similar vibe to Plane Chase.
There's
but-
like a shared deck in the middle.
Yes, and you can roll to draw a card from the deck, and the deck is like 80% useful artifact and like 20% curses. And if you reveal a curse, it goes on you as a player, and if you reveal an artifact, you just get it for free.
Yeah, it's like you get the opportunity to get a trinket, but oh no, this trinket's bad.
Yeah,
It
he talks about like, oh, I'm going to roll the dice and dig for treasure. You know,
Yeah.
like, are you going to find treasure or are you going to find a curse?
Yeah.
Very funny episode of Shuffle Up and Play for a variety of reasons, but
yeah.
he's also a big part of it.
That he is just a very funny content creator.
Absolutely. I super like the Asian Avenger on
Krim.
Twitch. Krim. I've
Krim.
watched his Twitch stream a few times. He streams a lot of Standard specifically, but he's just hilarious. He's just like he's very like he'll get under your skin against his opponents. Like he loves
Spamming good game, good game, good
yeah,
game.
and he'll spam the Khan floating in the water emote.
Relaxing.
Like, yeah, it's so funny. He always plays like control, like Grixis control decks, just like counterspells everything until they concede, and then he's just like laughing his head off at the fact that he made someone concede.
This
and
deck doesn't have a win con, it's just counterspells.
It's hysterical.
I do
honestly.
feel like there's a group of really great streamers. Like I know Voxy streams as well.
Yeah, Voxy's really good fun, and she streams a lot of Limited. If you're interested in Limited,
Yeah,
she's got good vibes.
It's actually a good one to watch if you're like, you know, your game store has a, you know, upcoming draft, F&M draft of that thing, and you're like, I actually haven't done any research of this set.
Yeah.
Watch Voxy. She's really good at explaining like the archetypes in a set.
Yeah, and she makes really good decks. She wins a lot of like limited events because she's just like played a lot of it. She loves it and is very good at it, and is very funny as well.
I occasionally get a win on limited. Occasionally.
Me too. It's hard, man. It's a different format. I would like to just make one final shout out in the funny category here. I've not listened to almost any of the content that these guys make, but we've had multiple listeners who are not people we know, like people from overseas or whatever, who found our content. And when we talk to them about like, oh, what do you guys like about us? They're always like, you remind us of the Legendary Creature podcast. It's popped up multiple times now for me when I've been like, hey, how'd you hear about us?
I've
like,
had a few people say that, yeah, you remind me of Legendary Creature Podcast.
yeah, right?
It's wild. I actually haven't done any research into these guys at all.
I've listened to them before. They're a couple American guys, and they're just like very bantery. They're just like a bit silly, bit goofy, and they like teach you stuff, but in a kind of bantery way. And I'm like, okay, I get it. Like that's sort of
The
our
American
MO.
James and Walls.
Yeah, maybe. But
Yeah,
they've been
okay.
around for ages. I for some reason thought they were really new because I just hadn't heard of them. They've been around for like 6 or 7 years now. And I've listened to a couple of their episodes. They're pretty funny. So yeah, if the reason you like listening to me and James is because of the banter and the goofiness, I reckon you probably would like Legendary Creature Podcast.
It's all staged. Walt and I don't actually like each other.
No.
It's all scripted. Everything you're hearing right now, our entire friendship of like, how long have we been friends?
78 months.
Seems wildly accurate.
I don't think it is. James isn't even here.
No,
James is in a different room.
This is a dream that Walt's having.
Holy cow. I can record my dreams. This is amazing.
And get patrons from it.
Let's have a thrifty interlude.
Thrifty interlude. Alright, let's take a break.
Got lots to cover. Loads more recommendations for you, for content creators out there. Maybe we'll go more into like learning stuff in the second half.
Yeah, there's a lot of content creators that are like more us that are trying to get you to have better games of Commander or teach you things.
Yeah. So we'll go into some of that in the second half. So before that, we're going to hear a little something about a thrifty card. And as is tradition, I will be performing a monologue. And this week, the card is brought to life in monologue form from the perspective of someone in the card art. James, would you like to read the card I'll be featuring this week?
I'm assuming it is the druid in the art, right? Is it?
It is.
Yeah,
yes.
okay. Well, I mean, the druid that you're about to hear is Leafkin Druid. For 1 and a green, you'll get a creature elemental druid. It's a 0/3, and it can tap to add green, or if you control 4 or more creatures, it adds green instead.
I can kill you all. I have this deer. See her standing behind my shoulder? Her name is Winifred, and she's killed 14 men with her bare hands. Or bare hooves, or bare whatever bloody deers have on the end of their legs. Not just that, I have a wolf. No, 2 wolves. They watch my back and bite people's heels off their shoes. They get all embarrassed about that. Yeah. Don't mess with them. And I've got a cat. I think it's a cat. I don't really know. He looks a bit like a beaver, or maybe a raccoon, or even a very old man with a hairy face. But he'll get you. He'll get you in the head and rip your eyebrows off and play with them. He's crazy. So, collectively, we're pretty good. Bad. Bad. We're bad. So bad we'll kill you. Well, mostly them. I just frown at the front like this and tell everyone about them. And try not to get killed myself. That's most of it. These guys are bloody wild, picking weird fights. Like with you! Get budgeted!
Oh my god. What? That is not what I thought Leafkin Druid would sound like. I get it. Like, Leafkin Druid's got all these horrific monsters that are
Behind him,
getting the killing, doing the stuff, and he just kind of sits there and gives you some mana.
helping out.
Oh my god.
In any way you can. If you enjoyed that, you can see my bizarre Thrifty Thursdays posts every Thursday in the Greensboro Commander Community Discord server in the Thrifty Thursdays channel. And you can also see us bring some of this to life in video form over on TikTok at Get Commanded. Cool. So back to the other content, the stuff that's not me doing strange voices.
Well, we said that there are podcasts like us just before that interlude, but there's no one else that's doing that.
No.
There's no one else that's doing that. But we did say that there were podcasts like us and content creators out there that are trying to, like, give information and grow people's learning. So
let's do a whole learning segment. So
category of learning.
People who are trying to teach you stuff. And I would like to start, I think, with talking about a very, very important part of what makes Commander basically the format that it is today.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Sheldon Menery, who unfortunately has passed away as of a couple of weeks ago at the time of recording this episode. So he famously is sort of the godfather of Commander. He was the guy, along with a couple of others, who started playing Elder Dragon Highlander, as it was called, way back when, before it was an officially sanctioned format.
He was a judge at the time and just wanted a cool, challenging thing for judges to do between rounds and stuff like that at GPs.
Yep, and of course founded the Commander Rules Committee, which is part of what made it an official format, and was on that Rules Committee until, his death a couple of weeks ago. Sheldon was a really, really incredible guy. We've obviously never met him before, but I've read some really heartfelt messages from other people who had met him and had interacted with him. He was a guy who cared so deeply about the format that we play and the people playing it. He really, I think, gave to me such a strong impression of someone who wanted you to have a fun time playing Commander. Yeah. And that was his number one priority.
I feel like we, and I say we as a collective, every Commander player to ever exist, owe a great debt to Sheldon for what he's given us. Like, just from a personal level, like, Walt and I, met in, like, just pre-COVID lockdowns and all this kind of stuff. And Commander gave us something to keep us sane in the most lockdown city in the world. And that is because of Sheldon. We are making this podcast about a format of Magic that we love so much. And we have basically our entire life built around at this point. Like, a lot of our life is around, researching cards or building a Commander deck and scheduling time to hang out with friends, which, by the way, as an adult, I genuinely think is so rare. Like, so many of my friends that don't play Commander or play Magic are baffled by how often I'm hanging out with friends in person.
Yeah.
And not at a bar or not going out to dinner or something like that. It's like an activity and a shared hobby. And I think there is no way that Magic could have got to that point if Commander didn't come around and Sheldon didn't introduce us to this format, because 1v1 Magic is a tournament level thing. People obviously got together and practiced and all that kind of stuff, but Commander is something special, and he had such a vision for this format, and I wish that he could see the next 5 years, because I can see it only is going to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And look, we're bringing this up in the learning section because Sheldon has a lot of really outstanding articles on Star City Games with his updates from the rules committee about cards that they were looking at and the sorts of things that they consider when they're looking at bans and unbans and the format and the health of the format and all this kind of stuff. He's
also appeared as a guest on a lot of different podcasts and stuff like that, where he has provided some really interesting insights into why cards are banned and also like why the format is structured the way it is and why Infect is only 10 even in Commander.
He was a really, really clever guy with a lot of really interesting thoughts about our format, and I highly recommend reading them on Star City Games. On the Commander Rules Committee website. There's a number of articles with explanations of different things. A lot of those are penned by his hand. Rest in peace, Sheldon. The format is in very safe hands, and it's basically because of you. Because, people like Jim from the Spike Feeders and Olivia Gobert-Hicks, these are the recent elevations to the Commander Rules Committee. Those people will look after the format, and Sheldon's done all the work he possibly could. So thank you, Sheldon.
Just paying our respects from Get Commanded.
Yeah.
You've done such incredible stuff for us.
Yeah, and we've learned a lot from you. And continuing with the theme of learning, and we mentioned Jim from the Spike Feeders just now. The Spike Feeders.
Yeah, great channel.
Really, really good, high-powered content. We didn't mention them in gameplay before because to me they're a bit more than just gameplay content. They also have a really great series called Spike on the Mic, which is like very short sort of podcast style episodes, kind of more like opinion pieces, like single person podcasts. Jim, I think, has a really, really outstanding view on the format and what makes it so good. He builds really, really cool decks specifically. I've learned a lot from watching the Spike Feeder, specifically about that sort of more high-powered part of our format. Not strictly CEDH, but just the sort of top, 30 to 40% of our format. They are really specialists in that area, and I've learned so much from
them. I also think that something the Spike Feeders do really well is the explaining of the different opinions of the controversial stuff in the format. I think they touch on they talk about Dockside and if it should be banned. They touch on these topics that some content creators are like, I don't want to touch that because half of my listeners will have one opinion and half of my listeners will have another opinion. I don't want to touch that. It's too controversial. I'm going to back out. I actually really appreciate how specifically Jim and Jim on Twitter and all that kind of stuff does share his opinion quite openly and proudly. I appreciate that controversial opinions are spoken about with the Spike Feeders.
He's got a really level head. He's very good at seeing people's perspectives and then offering his own in a respectful and interesting way. You learn a lot from him just by being near him, basically. So 100%. Shout out Spike Feeders.
Next, I would probably say in the learning category, this is a little bit more... there's a lot of history and culture that is in this channel. I love it. I have officially I think I've got 4 videos left on this entire channel to watch.
Wow.
It's Ristic Studies.
Oh, yeah.
Sam from Ristic Studies. These are just if you are one of the kids that used to watch video essays back in the day when they were really popular on YouTube, Sam is keeping up to date with this video essay thing, but it is exclusively on Magic, and it's mainly about the flavor or the art or the
history,
even the history or the cultural context of certain cards, sets, competitions. The thing that I loved about Sam was learning about all of the Pro Tour stuff from way before I started playing. He says, it's the summer of 2005. This card has just been printed. Will it warp Type 2 form? I
love his Tarmogoyf one for that. It's a really good deep dive on
the summer of the GAC.
That's the more recent one, right? I basically can't speak highly enough of Ristic Studies. It's I think honestly some of his videos for me, cross the boundary of video essays and enter a territory that's closer to poetry.
Oh my god, he appeared on an episode of Game Nights, and I think it was the Dominaria United episode, the one where that set was released. And they did the typical Game Nights of Josh Likai. He goes like, how's it? Josh Likai, welcome to another episode of Game Nights. Today, we have Sam from Ristic Studies, and we're going to Dominaria. And then it cut. And I think they genuinely just said, all right, Sam, do your thing over Dominaria and talk about the relevance of the plane.
Right.
And he did this little segment on their show. And it was beautiful. He was talking about Dominaria is the home, the center point of the multiverse for the Magic universe. It's where most of us started playing characters, beloved places, locations, themes, and lore and all this kind of stuff. And then it cuts back to Jimmy and he's like, wow, that was really deep, man. You get this sense that he has such a profound understanding of the game in a piece of media rather than a game.
Yeah.
It's like a media and a storytelling vessel rather than a game.
He's, to me, sort of personifies a category of Magic content where I sort of think of these people and I'm like, we're lucky we have them. To me, Sam is someone who has an extraordinarily impressive ability to write, to craft arguments, to understand history, to research, to create video content. And we are so fortunate that he's decided that Magic is the place to do that, because he could do literally anything else and that content would be that amazing.
He could be on National Geographic doing documentaries on the Roman Empire.
They would look cheap compared to him, honestly.
Yes, honestly.
That's the quality of content he makes. If honestly, if you don't check out anyone else from this episode, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, check out Ristic Studies.
My top favorite videos from him, if you want to do it, I would say Understanding Sagas. That's a great video.
Yeah.
He talks about the artistic design of the card and how sagas work thematically and how the artwork can tell a sequence of stories. Mm-hmm. I would also recommend Red Deck Wins.
That's a good one.
I would recommend the Tarmogoyf and the Hogak episodes.
I still haven't watched Hogak, but Tarmogoyf was a great one as well.
Yeah, the Hogak one is really interesting. It talks about how Modern Horizons as a set was meant to push the boundaries of Modern. Mm-hmm. And Hogak was this seemingly wacky card for Commander. And then people were like, but what if?
Yeah.
And then they just broke the format wide open. There were people behind Reed Duke and that who were commentating, holding up signs in the background saying, please ban Hogak.
Wow.
If you are interested in Pro Tour history, watch those episodes. They're my top picks from his channel.
I would recommend, I agree on all of those. I haven't seen Hogak, obviously, but I like all those other episodes you just talked about. I super highly recommend the Rancor video. It's one of his oldest, but it's basically, it doesn't look like it's going to be about it, but it's actually about flavor text.
Yeah,
and
really
the history of flavor text on Magic cards and the type and how they get written and the focus of them. It's really, really cool. And I think it's got, I don't know if it's called Rancor or if Rancor's the thumbnail, but it's
definitely the thumbnail.
Scroll way down. It's one of his older ones, but it's a really, really good video.
Do you want to know a little bit of cool stuff from my personal connection to Ristic Studies?
No.
Sam was the person to preview Tornos as his apprentice.
Oh, no way!
And he did it in a really cool way that resonated strongly with me, and he did it as a song. He built a loop kind of sequence of Tornos because he's copying these triggered abilities from artifacts.
Wow.
And he made a loop thing. He's also a musician.
Yeah.
I love this guy.
The guy
I want
does
to meet
everything.
him.
He's so cool. I'd love to meet him. I want to get some of that merch. I don't know if you've seen the shirts that he does. They look, it's a really cool logo that he has.
I think I might sign up to the Patreon.
Yeah,
Quite
honestly,
possibly.
do it. My next recommendation is actually a piece of content that doesn't exist anymore, but I think the back catalogue is so strong, and I specifically want to call it out because a lot of the opinions shared on this particular podcast inspired some of our earliest episodes, and I look back on them really fondly. Commander Sphere.
Yeah.
So this was the podcast that Rachel Weeks hosted before she became part of Command Zone. So she hosted it with Dan Sheehan. Mm-hmm. The two of them it was much more of a comedy focus. The two of them are both comedians.
They're goofballs. They are hilarious.
Absolute goofballs. They are hilarious. But they have some really cool thoughts on casual magic, which you probably now, some of you might be more aware of because Rachel Weeks has shared a lot of those on Command Zone, and I think that's a really good thing. But yeah, super highly recommend all of their back catalogue. They've got some really hilarious ones. Will It Juice, I think, is one of my favourite ones. They go through different...
Will It Juice?
different creature types and describe what they think the juice made from that creature would taste like.
Oh my god.
It's horrible and hilarious, and I love it.
I will shout out their the color pairing discussion episodes, because that inspired quite a lot of the color philosophy episodes that we do on this podcast.
100%. And I would be remiss to not mention the fact that now that Rachel Weeks has departed, Dan Sheehan has a new project that he's going to be...
He does, yeah.
The first episode is not yet out at the time of recording. It might be by the time it comes out for all of you. It's called Pie Break. He's going to be taking a look at something, any piece of content or thing in the world that is not magic, and then discussing with a guest what color identity they would assign to it. So basically every week he'll bring on a different guest. The guest will be sort of a specialist in this particular thing. Like maybe it'll be like Formula One, will be the thing. He'll bring on someone he knows who is like a huge Formula One aficionado. They'll talk about it for a while and then they'll assign it a color pairing or
that's really cool.
Pairing.
I love that.
Yeah.
As someone that is obsessed with the color philosophy, I'm really excited for this to come out.
It'll be really cool. So that's Pie Break, and you can follow Dan Sheehan on Twitter to stay up to date on that. But that'll be really cool. But yeah, Commander Sphere, super highly recommend for learning more about our game. Someone
in a similar bracket that I'm thinking about now, as we were talking about Ristic Studies, Spice 8 Rack.
Oh yeah,
is also on that level of we're really lucky that he plays Magic, because if they wanted to do like a BBC documentary, quite easily they could get employed doing...
They could 100% do that.
100%. Spice is someone that has a very strong and open political position and loves to relate the real world of our world to magic and contextualize parts of our even judicial system, our police system, into the context of like Ravnica. And like there's a great episode, I'm thinking one specifically, where he explains to Domri Raid how police brutality and how police powers are abused and how the police system is kind of crap.
Wow.
Really, really recommend. It's awesome. Spice is great.
Super long video essay style content. Ristic Studies, if we're talking more on as being profound, I would say Spice 8 Rack is much wittier, much more like overt jokes throughout.
Much
kind
more
of thing.
Based, I think, is the word.
Also that, like definitely, like you say, there's a very obvious political slant that they're coming at stuff from, and they share it, and it's interesting to hear about.
I would say Spice also really, really enjoys looking at the stuff that no one else respects about Magic. Like, they did a really great lengthy episode. It was like at least an hour and a half on the series of cards and how impactful they are to Magic as a whole. They explained that like, the mutate mechanic came from the meld mechanic, or that not meld is the other one. Augment. From that unsanctioned box.
Something like that.
Regardless, they explain very explicitly that like the importance of these stupid jokes impact the next 5-10 years of Magic.
Yeah.
How really cool. Really good episode.
There's some really good videos out there. I've got a few that are bookmarked that I need to get to. But yeah, highly recommend. Definitely if you're someone who enjoys political discussions, and like if you are someone who enjoys like ContraPoints or Philosophy Tube.
Also a huge fan of that channel.
Or even like Lindsay Ellis, who I know is not on YouTube anymore, but was for a long time. Like that kind of style of content. I think Spice 8 Rack will be your cup of tea.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd like to shout out one I've been enjoying a lot recently, which is Mark Rosewater's Drive to Work podcast.
I've listened to a lot of Mark Rosewater purely for the philosophy color stuff. I've not extended myself out of that episode series. But
I've been the same, actually. So that's mostly what I've been listening to. I've been listening to his... he's been doing a series on the shards. The 3 color pairings that are shards. And he's now, I think, just started on the... what's the other one? There's Shards and
Wedges.
there's Wedges. Yeah, he's also on Wedges now. Yeah, really cool. Definitely, if you like our color philosophy series, there's a lot. Mark Rosewater, obviously, as a designer of the game, is more embedded in the game itself and less like ours are sort of embedded also in politics and philosophy and that kind of thing. Mark is aware of that stuff, but it's much more like if you want to understand how the head of game design at Wizards thinks about color, highly recommend. I've learned so much about how important color is to our game and also just how interesting it is. There's so many cool dynamics that come about because we have color in our game.
There's a segment on his like really early episodes of the Drive to Work podcast where he was talking about the single colors, where he like goes, all right, what pop culture characters are blue? And he like goes through and he explains why these characters are like white, for example. He says Superman is a white character, but you can look at certain parts of his story where he is like white, red or white, because like he's in, the conflict of Superman comes between his passion for Lois Lane or the city or Metropolis, whatever, but his values sit within there. So like there's a battle between conflict and values and what emotion you put into things. Really, really, really interesting kind of take on characters that you love as well. I love hearing him talk about like, the 10th Doctor, what color is he? Because we now know he's Izzet. He actually has a card.
He's got a color identity now. I would also recommend this podcast as well, because most of the content he makes is actually not the color stuff. It's his insights into the design of sets. So if you're someone who just like loves limited or loves standard especially, I think you'll appreciate more of that. Like he's done like 4 episodes on the designing of Wilds of Eldraine, for instance. So if you just want to understand more about how they make sets and what kind of things they think about and all that, I think highly recommend that stuff.
He's also just a fun guy to listen to. He's very entertaining.
He's very charismatic.
He laughs at himself, which I love. I think that's great.
Yeah, definitely. We've talked about them twice already in this episode, but I should recommend the Command Zone podcast.
Their actual podcast.
They have an actual podcast. We forget because so much of what they make these days is amazing gameplay content. But they started with a podcast and they still make a podcast. It is, in my opinion, significantly better for having Rachel Weeks in it.
I would agree. I've been listening to more episodes recently because Rachel has bought... something that Command Zone, I think, and a lot of other content creators were guilty of doing in the last couple of years was just piggybacking on how much product Wizards is putting out. Like, set review this, budget pre-con upgrade that. Spoiler season previews. If you just want to do that, that's great. Go for your life. If you want that content, go find it. But everyone is doing it. The reason why Walt and I don't do set reviews is because everyone else is doing it. Rachel has come on and done some really interesting episodes like the toughest brews to build from Wilds of Eldraine, which is like an interesting take on a set review. It makes me feel like the get commanded slant on, okay, we want to talk about this topic from this set. How do we slant it in this way? Is very aligned with what Rachel wants to talk about. I mean, she did an episode on all her decks, and then very quickly you were like, we're going to do that. We're going to do that.
I think Rachel Weeks is probably my favorite Commander deck builder, full stop.
It's pretty good.
And I think she builds decks that sit at a really like fun power level. Like she understands power level in a way that a lot of people do not. And I think builds at a power level that I really like, which I can't say I necessarily aligned with when it was Jimmy and Josh running the show. I think they play at probably a slightly higher power level than what I gravitate towards. So I really appreciate Rachel for being like a sort of representative for the little guys, like
she's the coconut milk to your spicy curry.
That's especially good when you know that I can't do spicy food at all.
Every time I cook a curry for Walt, it's like 2 cans of coconut milk to dial down.
You got to do it. I'm the whitest man to ever exist.
But I'd strongly recommend Command Zone for like pretty much any Commander player, especially because of their experience in the space. They've been doing it for some of the one of the longest running. Next to like the Professor, like they have been doing it just for the longest time. They are just good at it. They can just review a set really well. They can do budget pre-con upgrades. They do everything that all content creators do good.
Yeah, I think I would agree with their tagline, which is your destination for all aspects of Elder Dragon Highlander.
It's true.
That's pretty accurate. If you want to just have one resource to go to, besides us.
Yeah, come back to us.
Come back to us.
We're here to help you have better games of Commander.
Yeah.
That's our tagline. We're good at that.
We are good at that.
You know, I want to shout out, before we move on to another section to talk about, I do want to shout out a podcast I've personally been really enjoying recently, and it's the Commander Cookout podcast.
Oh.
These guys are Canadian. They are from...
Canada.
I think British Columbia.
Okay.
Anyway, they're very funny. I find that there's two hosts. I can't remember their names now, which is terrible. But there's two of them, and they have a very similar vibe to us of this, like, you can tell they've been friends for a long time. They just banter. They've been doing it now for, I think, 3 to 5 years. They've been making content. And I will actually say, even though I've been shitting on set reviews and all that kind of stuff, I listen to their set reviews. I listened to like 3 or 4 episodes from their Commander Masters season of episodes. I really, really enjoyed them.
Cool.
I actually found their opinions relevant to the average player, and kind of advisatory, not just this card is clearly the best card in the set, or this card has been reprinted and is now at its lowest price. Go pick it up. They were talking about, like, you know, cards from the set, like, you know, that synergize with a particular deck archetype that's up and coming. Like, you know, they're talking about, like, these cares about being cast from exile cards, and I just really appreciate that they do set reviews that aren't just this card has been reprinted, go pick it up. This card, like Besiege the Mirror, everyone knows that is a broken card from Eldraine. Everyone knows about that card. Cool. What about Sir Ginger? Like, tell me about this. And they look at the legendary creatures, and then they will do like a little series on, like, their Lord of the Rings one. They did a deck tech for Gimli, Counter of Kills.
Cool.
Which is like one of the cards that everyone was just like glossing over because not that powerful, not that good. I appreciate the fact that they went, all right, let's try and make it as good as we can get it.
That's cool.
Yeah, I appreciate them. Go check them out.
Commander Cookout.
Commander
Sounds
Cookout
fun.
podcast.
I like that a lot.
I have to say, they're a lot more adult humor as well.
Okay.
In a similar vein, we talked about Tabletop Jocks. They do a really funny thing with their patrons. At a certain tier, they give you a nickname.
No.
And it's...
There's a dangerous game.
Yeah, if you want to sign up for their patron, go for it. We won't bully you on our Patreon.
No, not yet. I think we should talk, at least very briefly, about CDH.
Yes, I mean, CDH is something that we've talked about at length before in our own episode. And is something that we're playing, well, I'm playing quite a bit of recently.
Yes, I still will play once every blue moon. Literally, if the moon is blue, I will be playing CDH. It's not true. I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, it's fine. CDH content that we recommend. I think we could sort of do gameplay quickly. I have 2 channels that I really enjoy. Playing with Power and Play to Win.
Play to Win is definitely one of my favourite places to go for gameplay content of CDH.
Yeah, I think that they're 2 really different. I think if you like CDH or are interested in CDH, one of these channels will be for you. And I say that because they're very different.
They do like present it in very different ways.
Very different ways. Very different impressions of CDH that you get from watching them. So both are very, very short videos, which is really great for those of you out there who have not very much time. I've definitely like crammed a whole video in while eating my breakfast before going to work. They're great like that. Playing with Power comes at it from a slant of like, okay, raw gameplay. That's all they're going to show you. They'll give you a rundown of the deck in the beginning. They'll show you the opening hand. And then you're straight in gameplay. All you will hear is voiceover, description of the gameplay, and see the game play out. That's it. It's to the point. It's very raw, but it's got like a real, it's direct. Like you know what you're in for.
100%.
Play to Win, I agree. It's probably my preferred as well.
It's so, like, they present it in a more realistic view of what it's like to sit down with real CDH players. Because now that I've played a lot more CDH and have a community of CDH players, it's very funny to play CDH. And there's a lot of banter, and there is a little bit of like table politics that go
Yeah.
on, and there's also a lot of retrospectives that happen in CEDH. Pretty much after every CEDH game I've ever played, we'll sit down and we'll talk about like, oh, I'm really curious why you tutored for this thing instead of this thing at that time. Why'd you do that? Did you have the other thing in hand? And then
Play to Win captures this really well by having the cutaways to the two of them in the studio.
Yes.
And they literally will ask. Sometimes it'll be like, oh, why'd you tutor that right then? And then they'll describe the line and be like, maybe it was wrong. Maybe I should have considered this.
Yeah.
Back to the gameplay
Back to the
again.
game.
It's really cool.
the other thing that they do really well is you can actually follow them on TikTok as well. They do shorts on TikTok of some of their games. Specifically, on TikTok, they have a great series where they just resolve ridiculous stacks.
Oh.
And so it'll be one of the hosts going, Flosserstorm resolves countering to this thing. Mystic and Ristic Remora will resolve, and Callum will draw 2 cards from that. And then Orcish Bowmasters will trigger, which will resolve 1 ping towards this creature, which will die, which will cause a triggered ability, putting a new thing on the stack. And finally, Counterspell resolves.
Yeah.
Like,
Playing with Power do some of those as well. It's always
it's
good
very
fun.
funny.
Yeah. I love seeing the stack, like when they actually lay it out on the
like
screen.
phase out as
Yeah.
it goes through.
Very, very cool.
Look, I'm going to shout out and we'll link this in the show notes of this episode, I think, the Australian CEDH Discord server.
Oh, yeah.
These guys aren't content creators. There are a couple of content creators in there, though. I will shout out Malta Nun, which, spoiler alert, there may be some content with Get Commanded coming onto Malta Nun very
Stay
soon.
posted.
But also, Scoop in Response is a old-time Australian content creator that has recently switched kind of exclusively to CEDH.
Yep.
These guys are on that server, but also Australian CEDH server as a whole is just an incredible CEDH community with some really, really good stuff. Like, I recently competed in the Dockside Debacle 2, and if you didn't see our tweets and our Instagram posts about that, I made it to the finals, which was insane.
It's very cool. I was away at the snow and I was on my phone watching on Twitch just to be like, is James going to win? And he almost did.
So
as well.
close. The commentators were like, all right, we're going to shut up now because we think James is about to win. They have incredible competitions and incredible stuff that happen, and also just play really frequently on Spell Table. Lots of resources. They have a YouTube channel and a Twitch channel. I'm not sure how much stuff they're going to do as a community server on there, but get in the server. It's a great place to talk to. And yeah, the winner of the Australian CEDH Dockside Debacle was an American. So if you're an American listening to this,
you can still hop in the server.
it's welcome to all peoples.
Definitely. And speaking of CEDH, I think we'd be remiss to not mention, for those of you who are less familiar with CEDH, checking out episode 13 of our podcast, which
It's an old one.
Yeah, what CEDH isn't. So it was like a myth-busting episode, but also basically trying to give you an impression of what CEDH is actually like, because we found that a lot of the people we were talking to about CEDH and a lot of people we were seeing online had this warped idea of what CEDH is, and it's just not accurate. So, we wanted you to help you to try out a new way of playing Commander, because it is still Commander.
It is 100% Commander. It is just as we put it in that episode, a metagame and a mind state.
Yes.
We can let you explore that in that episode.
Yes, definitely.
I think it's something we should revisit, though. CEDH.
I think so, yeah.
I think because I was reflecting on that episode, looking at the notes here and going, wow, my CEDH skill has improved so much since then.
Mm-hmm.
My deck has been upgraded a ton, and I really get the metagame of CEDH now. I've been playing a lot. So, yeah, maybe we'll revisit that soon.
Yeah, maybe
if the Space Commanders deem it necessary.
Yeah, hopefully. Send an email off. I would like to just very briefly at the end of this episode, just talk about some of our favorite content creators who talk about other formats.
There are other formats of
I
Magic?
know!
What?
I cannot believe it. I've been floored.
I'm actually going to Pauper after we finish recording this, so I'm
As
aware.
is basically tradition at this point on a Sunday. Sadly, I will not be making it. But yeah, speaking of Pauper, I have one channel that I love for Pauper, specifically for gameplay. Snapbolt Games.
Yep. Awesome channel.
Yeah, he does stream live on Twitch, but uploads all of those as VODs to YouTube as well.
The VODs are great too. He cuts out all the bullshit and
Yep.
skips the waiting, and it's actually like a nicely edited Twitch stream to watch.
Yeah. The thing I love about Snapbolt is that he talks through his decision making really well. I found, as someone who had not played very much 60-card Magic, and especially not very much 60-card competitive Magic, I learned so much about how you should be thinking about the game from Snapbolt. And yes, it helped me mostly for playing Pauper and understanding the format. But we've said this before on the podcast. Being a good 60-card Magic player makes you a good Magic player full stop.
In general.
It will help you
For
so
sure.
much with Commander as well. So I'd highly recommend checking out Snapbolt Games if you're interested in Pauper or want to learn more about Pauper.
Yeah, I mean, Walt and I watch pretty much all the new ones pretty much religiously. If he's doing a new, Pauper competition, we'll watch the Snapbolt. He recently did one with an affinity list that I have tweaked a little bit, and I'm going to be on affinity in the next couple of weeks.
Cool.
4-color affinity, though.
Ooh.
Screw 2-color, man.
Spicy.
It's too simple. I would also recommend, while we're on the topic of Pauper, going to PDH, Pauper Elder Dragon Highlander.
Yeah.
The PDH pod and Papa Pauper from the Common Connoisseurs. He has
That's a mouthful.
Well, Papa Pauper is his online persona, and he is a
Okay.
part of a YouTube channel called the Common Connoisseurs.
It sounds like the name of an indie band, though, don't you think?
Papa Pauper and the Common Connoisseurs.
Yeah.
It does. They're playing in Fitzroy next weekend.
they start the set and they're like, thanks so much for coming along, guys. Oh man, I'm so tired. I've been drinking mulled wine and sitting in the sun with dandelions, and you know how it is.
Anyway, this is our song called Pennies on a Dime.
Oh, look at the pennies.
It does give off that vibe in
does,
the video
yeah.
as well. But no, these guys are the experts in the space. And by this, I mean they are genuinely... PDH is a relatively small but ever-growing format.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't listened to our PDH episode, go back 10, 11, 12 episodes ago.
Something like that.
I can't remember what episode it was. It was really, really great for me to go in and have a look. I joined the PDH Global Community Discord server, had a chat with some of the rules committee members like Scarecrow and all of those guys. And the PDH pod and Common Connoisseurs are the experts. They are making the most content in the space. They are the big creators. They have Twitch streams. They do gameplay. Something I really like about Common Connoisseurs is they do Twitch streams where they build a deck on stream for a commander recommended by their community.
Wow.
Because they have over 4,500 commanders to choose from.
Yeah.
Even more now because a new set's been released. But they just are great entertainers and just the experts in the field. So if you have listened to our PDH episode and want to follow up, go check them out.
Yeah, definitely do. We'd be remiss to not mention honorary space commander Sam Black. May God make him grand and beautiful.
In Sam we trust.
In Sam we
Amen.
trust. I absolutely love, and I've talked about it before on this podcast, his podcast Drafting Archetypes, where he will take a dive into a particular archetype of the currently in rotation limited format on Arena. He just understands limited like nobody else I've ever really heard. I haven't really listened to much else, so take that with a grain of salt. But he's got really interesting takes on the game. I like the way that he approaches problems and talks with people. So yeah, Sam Black for limited.
I've recently gone back and had a look at some of Sam's old Pro Tour games. I watched him specifically after watching Ristic Study's video on Tarmogoyf.
That's a good one.
Looked at the games that he played when he was on Tarmogoyf.
Yeah.
And oh my god, those mirror matches, they are the most entertaining thing to watch. It is like a Mexican standoff, but instead of pistols, people are holding bazookas at each other, and it's just make a move. I dare you.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there is an abundance of great content out there, so we'll always be eternally grateful to all of you who choose to give your time to us every week. However, getting your information from a variety of places will make you a better Commander player, and outside of that, there's just lots of good times to be had in the Commander community online. We love our game and our format, and we hope you share our passion for the people who make this place so great. So, Space Commanders,
Command received. Ah, nice one. Now we've just recommended a bunch of people to go and check all this other content out. We may see our viewers drop in the next couple of weeks.
Stick around!
Stick around!
To you listeners, do you feel commanded? What do you think of our recommendations? And I want to know if anyone we recommended was brand new to you. Because I know a lot of you are as online as me and James are. You're aware of a bunch of those people. But was anyone you heard and you were like, I've actually not heard that person before?
Who the heck is Sam Black?
not a real fan if you don't understand.
Yeah, you've clearly only just joined us. Welcome to the podcast.
Yes, thanks for coming along.
Look, you can reach out to us and reply to these questions at the end of every single episode in many different ways. Reach out to us on Twitter, Instagram, or Threads, or send us an email. But the best place to talk with us and other members of our play group is the community Discord server by the Greensboro Commander community.
Yep.
It's where we post up updates from our episodes, and we are very, very active in that server. We're like basically moderators now on that server. So if you want to get in touch with us, that's the best place to go.
Absolutely. And we'd really appreciate if you have the time, if you could leave us a quick review on whichever platform you listen to this podcast on. Specifically, we know a lot of you listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It'll take you like 20 seconds. Just navigate to our page, leave us a little review. It makes a huge difference in reaching more amazing players like you.
It does. And we've got 5 stars on Spotify right now.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Thank
Apple
you,
Podcasts
everybody.
as well, actually. I checked the other day.
5 stars across the board.
Appreciate it.
And of course, don't forget to check out our Patreon page. It's linked in the show notes. This is the best way to support the content that Walt and I make. As will every other content creator tell you that we've just mentioned.
Yes.
It is the best way to support us.
It's true.
Like we said at the top of this episode, we're actually looking at using this Patreon money to make some serious upgrades to the content we make.
Near future. Keep your eyes peeled for sure.
So we would obviously like to shout out our wonderful patrons. So Stella Tam, Fuzzy, and Bottomless Potamus, thank you so much. And a very special shout out to Fletcher Cutting for supporting us in the Space Commander tier. You are the best.
It's true. And speaking of the best place to get your gaming accessories is Palms Off Gaming, who sponsor us as well.
Obviously.
They make some really amazing deck boxes, sleeves, binders, basically everything you could possibly need to keep all your cards safe. And you can check them out at palmsoffgaming.com.au.
All right, well, it's been an hour and 20 minutes, which means it's time to planeswalk away from the world of Magic the Gathering and into something that you've been doing. It's your turn this week. What's the go? What's been happening?
I would like to planeswalk into a film I saw recently about atomic energy. Oppenheimer. I finally got to it.
You mentioned this ages ago on the podcast that you had it booked like weeks in advance to get a ticket.
Over a month in advance.
That's wild.
So basically, the IMAX theatre in Melbourne is it's sort of adjoining to Melbourne Museum.
It's the largest screen in the Southern Hemisphere, I think.
Oh, maybe something like that. It's
very
very
ridiculous.
big.
It's like 4 stories tall or something ridiculous.
Silly large. For Oppenheimer specifically, for some people who are film aficionados may already know that Christopher Nolan often films his films on IMAX cameras, so they are basically made for IMAX to be displayed on. Those who are very, very astute may be aware that for Oppenheimer, Christopher Nolan decided to film the whole thing on, I'm going to get this wrong, but I think it's like 1380 film. It's a particular type and grade of film. I don't really understand it that much, except that I found out from a coworker of mine who used to work in film that the only projector for this type of film in the Southern Hemisphere is at IMAX Melbourne.
Wow, so the film that he shot it on, the only one that you would be able to see it on that film is in Melbourne at IMAX.
In the whole Southern Hemisphere, it's the only place. People have been flying in from Japan to see it on this screen. So again, like you can see the film in other places. You're still seeing the film, don't worry. But yes, if you want to see it in this particular type of film that he wanted to use, the only place you can do it is at IMAX.
Wow.
I went and saw it. I booked it in like a month in advance to
What'd you
see
think?
one of the sessions. It was amazing.
Really?
The actual film itself has like so much texture to it. Like it has, scores and marks and like cuts in the film that you can see. It gives it this really kind of warm and rugged kind of appearance.
And like a sepia kind of...
Yeah, just a little bit. It just has this particular quality. I don't understand enough about it to give you more of a description than that, but it had a really pleasant texture to it on the screen. And the film itself was like spectacular. Like Christopher Nolan knows how to make blockbuster films.
He is one of the directors you know the name of for a reason.
Yeah. He really just like understands what makes a film that you just walk out of and go like, wow.
Now, I haven't seen it yet, but I have heard that the explosion scene, did it get you?
It was pretty extraordinary. Yeah. It's like takes your breath away a little bit.
Wow. I think I have to see it. I feel like I'm going to miss out
it's something you have to see in the cinemas.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to watch it, you should go and see it in the cinemas. I'll be completely honest. It for me was not a perfect film. I find with a lot of Christopher Nolan stuff, as someone who is very socially conscious and who is interested in in the content that I try and change people's minds, especially when I make theatre content. And for me, I felt it could have gone a little bit further in a few ways. I won't go into details in case it'll spoil stuff for you.
To push the buck of, the social beliefs at the time were not correct retrospective.
It's more so like it casts a lens on a particular sort of way that America has conducted itself. And for me, in the particular spot I am in my life, I would want to dive into that a bit more and to have left the cinema with a bit clearer of an idea of what the filmmaker wanted me to think about it. I know I'm not speaking for everyone when I say that I'm looking for that in a film. Some people don't want that.
I have heard a lot of people review this film as unapologetic, which is something that I was like, wow, when you're talking about a situation like what is displayed in Oppenheimer, which we're not going to go into on this podcast.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about that, I think as a filmmaker, you almost have a bit of an obligation to make a comment on it.
It's a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
And for me, I wish that they had gone a little bit further. I'll say that, like, all that aside, though, the performances,
Cillian Murphy's
shooting,
Oppenheimer,
Cillian
right?
Murphy was incredible. I
think he's a brilliant actor.
He was fantastic. Robert Downey Jr. as Strauss. He was like, I think he's nominated for Best Supporting Actor. I wouldn't be shocked if he wins it. He gave an extraordinary performance. Emily Blunt gave an amazing performance.
She's in as well, yeah.
There was a couple of others. She was probably underutilized, but I'm blanking on her name.
Who played Einstein?
Oh, Florence Pugh. Florence Pugh was in it, but underutilized. I'm not sure who played Einstein, but he also gave a great performance.
Yep.
Yeah, like, it's worth seeing. It's a very, very good film. It's just like, for me, it's not a film I can find myself imagining rewatching, and for me, that's what makes a great film. So for me, it was a very good film, not a great film, but worth seeing in the cinema. It's like, it's spectacular.
I have to get on it. I know it's going to leave soon, and I feel like, you're right. If I do see it.
It's that kind of film. Like,
it's also the whole thing of, like, the IMAX exclusive.
They'll keep playing it for months. I reckon you got lots more time to see it, and probably you'll be able to get better seats than I did, even booking a month in advance.
I think Christopher Nolan tweeted these are the best 2 seats in the house to sit in if you were watching IMAX.
Yeah,
and you'll never get those seats.
No, not in a million.
Because there are a bunch of film nerds going, oh my god, I gotta get those seats. But I'm not experiencing the way Nolan intended.
I know. It's a little bit of a film bros film. I think it's still very good, but it's that kind of thing where you can imagine someone at a party being like, "Yeah, I saw Oppenheimer and I sat in the particular seat, and I really appreciated the sepia tones and all this."
You
stuff.
don't quite understand it unless you're smoking a cigar while watching it.
Oh, silly, but it was a great film. Highly recommend.
Oh, nice. All right, I'll book tickets.
Yeah,
I'll book tickets.
Sounds good. Well, that's all we have time for. So we'll see you next Friday for another transmission from the Space Commanders.
Goodbye, Commander players.